I got you beat on that.
It's unbelievable.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Camas High School and to today's special presentation.
Some things never change.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
that's right.
Holy cow.
I started teaching at Camas High School before he graduated, so that was a long time ago, right?
No.
Dr. Michael Barratt is a Camas High School graduate, and he graduated here in 1977. And after he left here, he went on to study at the University of Washington. And then he went on to study at Northwestern University. And then, let's see, I've got to look some of this up, I don't have it memorized. Oh, and then Wright State University. Where's that?
Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio.
No.
I didn't know that. But then he stuck with NASA and became a physician for NASA. And as I recall, one of the things that he was involved with was to, meet with the astronauts before and after a space flight to study the effects of space flight and zero-G on the human body. But it got to a point where he thought, for me to continue to do this and to truly understand what these individuals are going through, it'd be great if I could go on a mission myself. That's what he thought. So he applied for, was accepted to the Astronaut program, and in 2009,
Bingo.
I know, right? I'm old enough, I'm still in the 1900s. In 2009, he was selected to go on a mission where, as I recall, this first mission, he went up with a Russian space flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
He went up with a Russian, spent 6 months on the space station, and then hitched a ride back with the Russians back to Earth. And during this time, he personally experienced zero-G. I'm sure he made measurements on his own body all the time. He'll tell you about that process. And therefore learned a great deal about that firsthand. Now I understand and he got to go again. 2010? 2011. He got to go again, this time on the space shuttle, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, sorry. He's now spending a lot of his time going around to different schools and other organizations to talk about the space program. He's going to talk to us today about that as well. We're really happy to have him here, not just because he's an astronaut, but because he's a Camas High grad. We're very, very proud to have Dr. Michael Barratt.
Don't go too far, Cross. Hang on a second. So one of the things I did on my second mission was actually fly some little bit of Camas High School paraphernalia. So this actually flew on the last mission of the Space Shuttle Discovery. We put 5.3 million miles on it, on the best mission ever. And it's my pleasure actually to return this to Camas High School today. There's a little bit of certificate of authenticity, but anyway, I gladly give this to Dale Croswell as an additional duty, I should say, for Camas High School. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make one more announcement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the school was the size that it was when Dr. Barratt was here. We all fit in this theater, but unfortunately, we don't all fit. So that's why we're not all in here this morning. Those that are in-house, would you please be extremely quiet? We've been given the feedback that those that are watching on the live stream, the audio is super sensitive. So if you can be super silent, that really helps those that are watching from the classroom. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much, Alan. All right, I will try to be super careful about what I say. I really am psyched to be here. I call this Astro Homecoming because I really am from here and I really love this place and I love to come home whenever I can. I still have family here. This is my roots and I would just have to tell you that they're very deep. This is my childhood, which is actually about an 8-minute drive from here before a lot of these houses and certainly this school was here. Yes, it was all black and white. It was very dreary way back then in the dark ages. But it was a perfect childhood, and growing up on the farm here was just amazing. One of the more amazing things, though, was I had amazing teachers. Mr. Croswell was one of those because he was just always curious about everything, whether you wanted it or not, and could fill up a page with equations or just look at some natural scene and find some amazement in it. And it's those teachers that actually boosted me along just tremendously. But I will tell you, actually, let me show you this picture real quick. And I also want to emphasize, I am a paper maker in every sense of the word. That shirt, I actually flew on my 199-day mission on the space station. But I also worked in that paper mill up there. And that was at a time where you could actually work in the mill for the summer and pay for a year's worth of tuition and expenses at the University of Washington. Now, those days are long gone. But keep that work ethic in your head, because I'm going to hammer that home a little bit today. Actually, 2 prior generations of my family also worked in this mill, and a lot of what this community has become, a lot of what my generation was able to go do, is because of that industrial engine in the center of our town, which a lot of people thought smelled bad, but really did make a huge difference in what this place has been. So just to let you know, paper maker through and through. Last thing before we get started is I do like to remind people that there are always 6 folks in space, in orbit right now. These are my friends, international crew, Japanese, Russian, and US, that are up there right now. And the ISS has been continually crewed, occupied since the year 2000, since longer than most of you has been alive. There have been continual human presence in space. What an amazing thing that is, which we all kind of take for granted. But if you had told me when I was your age, that's our future, I wouldn't have believed you. But that is where we are. Now, back to the school thing. I could not actually find a picture of my Camas High School, which was lower, flatter, and much, much smaller. But I really admire your school here tremendously, but you're substituting for what picture I can't have. But I loved my time at Camas High, and I, again, was really attached to a lot of my teachers who really gave me that curiosity spark. But I will also tell you that when I was getting ready to apply for colleges, and I was doing pretty good in school, but the counselor brought me in. He said, "Barratt, you're no Einstein, but hard work can make up for that." And he was trying to encourage me to apply for the honors program at the University of Washington. And he was right on both counts. I knew how to study and I knew how to get reasonably good grades, but he knew exactly where I was. And I will tell you that I applied for that honors program and I did not get accepted. And believe me, I was doing pretty good here. So that was a bit of a humbling experience. But as it turned out, when I went to the University of Washington, I found out that you could actually take those honors classes anyway, which I did. And I blew everyone out of the water. Not because I was smart, not because I was an Einstein, but because someone told me, whatever I do, if I work hard enough at it, I will overcome any barrier. And he was absolutely right. So this is the University of Washington. I'd like to say it looks like this all year round. It doesn't. It's about 4 days a year, the cherry blossoms. But a wonderful place. One of the life lessons from the University of Washington, where I actually got a degree in marine zoology. I also I met this cute girl, and I was going through career anxiety at the time. She was going to med school, so I went to med school. I followed her. I kid you not, we got married our senior year during spring break, ironically, so we just had number 37, believe it or not, anniversary here. So thank you. So a lesson to guys, certainly don't be afraid of beautiful women with brains, boy, because they're just amazing. She's 10 times smarter than me. And you women with brains, please be gentle with us and be understanding, as my wife has been. But it's been an amazing thing to meet peers when you go to a place of higher learning and you start to meet people more like-minded than you. And the further you go, the more of those like-minded people you meet, which are really quite amazing. I spent then 8 years at Northwestern University Medical School, 4 years of medical school and then 4 years of internal medicine residency, which I did purposely to learn pathophysiology well because I was thinking about going into space medicine, which nobody really understood and I didn't even quite understand, but I was just starting to develop this fascination of it. 8 years is a long time after college, and I didn't stop there. So it was, as Mr. Croswell mentioned, another 2 years, Wright State University, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I did a specialty in aerospace medicine, which was a residency and a master's degree in aerospace physiology. And then eventually went to the Johnson Space Center, where I actually had to do a practicum year, so to speak. So long story short, after college, I went to school for another 11 years. Right? That sounds daunting. However, when you're loving the ride, it's amazing. And I would say that if you were trying to figure out what factor unites all astronauts, I would almost say everybody who works with the space program, it's the love of learning new things. We are happiest when we're discovering or learning new things. And lifelong learning just is an amazing thing. It's just the fuel for all of us. It keeps us going. And I really love Johnson Space Center. So again, I went to school for a long time, but it paid off because it was continual hard work that eventually landed me to where I thought I would never be able to get otherwise. So there's really no barrier that you can't overcome with hard work. I think I'm living proof of that. So I was lucky enough to get into the astronaut class of 2000. These are just the ultimate friends that I have, people that watch your back, you can trust with your life without hesitation in a moment's notice. It's wonderful. Now, that's kind of where I've come from, which is here, of course. A little bit about where I have been, and then we'll talk about where we and you guys are going. So a few things about leaving the planet. You have to go from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour. That's a sustainable velocity in orbit. That's your party trivia when someone asks you, what did you learn today? Okay. If you go faster than that, you'll leave orbit. You'll head to the moon or wherever. If you go slower, your orbit will decay and you'll become one with the Earth. So you really need to go 17,500 miles an hour. And interestingly, people say, how long does it take to get to space? They think a long time. Well, it's only 8 minutes and 45 seconds or so, about 8.5 minutes. So during that time, you loft to get enough above the atmosphere, and then you turn downrange, and you build that speed. And if there's any sense to things, yes, this is what it looks like. Now there should be some sound here, so just imagine there's a lot of deep rumbling going on. Let's see if we can recover that. Well, I'm not going to make the sound effects. It worked a moment ago, but it's kind of a deep-throated roar and a crackling. Thank you. Actually, let's do this. Yeah. Technology serves the people, not the other way around. I have to keep reminding myself of that. Okay, well, just imagine the noise. So 8.5 minutes, you're doing this, and this was the Russian Soyuz, and it's actually a very, very gentle takeoff. It literally builds thrust. When the thrust equals the weight of the rocket, off it goes. You can't even feel it. All of a sudden you watch your clocks, your countdown clock starts to count up, and you know you've left the planet. And I remember when the shroud blew off of the capsule, I put my wrist mirror up to the window, and I could see clouds like 10,000 feet below me. So you know you're leaving the planet. And eventually the G-forces build, and you weigh about 3.5 times your body weight, 4.5 times. 8.5 minutes later, you're in orbit. And there is nothing subtle about the transition to zero gravity. You go from 3.5 times your body weight, bam, to zero. And that rush of fluids to your head, all of a sudden things start to float, and you float up in your restraints. It's really quite amazing. And just a photo of that launch pad. This is the same launch pad that launched Yuri Gagarin, first man in space in 1961. So it was an incredible honor to be launching from that pad. But what a testament to Russian engineering. It still works, and it's simple, it's elegant. That's kind of defines Russian technology. Now, my next flight was on a little bit more complicated vehicle. Now, I'm going to cycle this real quick and just see if we can't make a difference, because this has also got some sparks and fire to it. All right, and if not, okay. Now, so this is what the space shuttle looks like when it launches. This was our launch on Discovery, and you build thrust for about 8 seconds or so, and then those big solid rocket boosters light on the side. That's slowed down quite a bit. And it is literally like a giant kicks you into the sky. It's not subtle at all. You definitely know when you've left the pad. And this is a view from the solid rocket booster looking down. It is about 2.5 minutes of incredible shake, rattle, and roll. You're just kind of thinking, come on, baby, hold together, like Han Solo did. And then after that time period, the boosters blow away, and there you can see the shuttle separates and continues on up to orbit. And those boosters will fall away from about 30 miles in height. By that time, you're already going 3,000 miles an hour. You still got a lot of velocity to build, but that's what it looks like, and the feeling is just amazing. It smooths out quite a bit, and then you just kind of enjoy your rocket ride into space. But again, only 8.5 minutes. You're on the ground, you're weighing normal, and everything looks like it should. If you drop something that falls, 8.5 minutes later, you are weightless, and everything changes, everything is different. This is what that shuttle looked like. Now, the weightless state plays a lot of tricks on the human body. We have our own version of seasickness, which is what we call space motion sickness. Now, this is a staged photo. We do not take pictures of each other when we do this. But it is amazing because your sense of balance is totally skewed when you put it in weightlessness. You have little balance organs, vestibular organs, that are always sensing gravity, and there's no gravity to sense. And you have your eyes, which tell you up and down is meaningless up there. It's what you choose to make it. And the weight of my body on my feet, that's gone. All those sensory inputs are gone. So everything that shows you your position sense, your motion sense, is radically altered, and it just plays tricks on your body. And that's only one system that we see. Now, the good news is space motion sickness is gone in about 2 days. Everybody kind of gets over it. Bad news is, over 50% of the people get it. So think about that, because when you're my age, you'll be able to go buy your ticket somewhere and just fly to space and enjoy the weekend. But this is the popular destination in low Earth orbit, the International Space Station. Who has seen this fly over? Okay, quite a few. Friday night, I was kind of out in the wilderness, and there was a flyover just bullseyed us. It's the third brightest object in the sky. It was a magnificent pass Friday evening. And you got the sun, you got the moon, and the third brightest object is something we made, which I think really rocks. And this is it. And this is an awesome picture, partly because I took it, and partly because it's a very happy coincidence of vehicles. There was let's see if this even shows up on here. There was a European vehicle, a cargo vehicle right here. There was a Japanese cargo vehicle. There were 2 Russian Soyuzes in a Progress, and then of course we docked the space shuttle to it. And it's just a huge stack. It is like a little tiny village up in low Earth orbit, and it's just amazing. That's an acre of solar panels there, so we are fat with electrical power, and we have a big broadband data pipe that we can get things up and down. And that kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like size-wise. Now, when I flew with my Russian commander and this gentleman on the far right there, Charles Simoni, was a spaceflight tourist, if you will. Now, he paid a lot. He paid about $40 million to fly with us, and we joked about it because we were getting paid to do this stuff. But he just loved spaceflight that much, and he was on his second flight. So that's another part of this new era that we're in. And I was the rookie. He was the experienced guy, the guy who paid for it. Now, Charles is a tech guy. He's one of the co-founders of Microsoft, and he invented Microsoft PowerPoint and, well, the whole Office suite, basically. And he's a type-rated jet pilot, so that kind of defines a lot of the people that we've flown in space. They're kind of techies. But he was quite amazing to fly with. My friend Koichi Wakata was already up there when we arrived, and if you look, you can see my hand, my right hand is holding a rail. You would see white knuckles if you looked up close. I've got another hand on my friend Koichi, and my feet are under foot rails to hold on because the sensation that you're going to fall is so strong. This was day 1 on station. A few months in, you get used to being in zero gravity. Your hair goes all to heck, but anyway, it's just really fun to be in zero G because you become a 3-dimensional creature. You navigate, you move objects 3-dimensionally. So what I have between my legs there is 3 food containers. Each one of those weighs about 25 pounds. But think about it, on the ground, we kind of walk with our legs and carry with our arms, but it's opposite up there. Your legs pretty much serve to either carry things or hold the rest of your body in place because you're not walking, you're floating and flying, and you kind of give yourself a little pull with your arm and fly like Superman, and you can just deliver a huge load on a dime. And it's really quite amazing how we become 3-dimensional creatures and why we can do that. Really, the station is up there for science. It's all about research. You get up in the morning and you look at your plan and you're doing experiments all day. And it's really cool because, like I said, one of the things that we love more than anything is discovering new things. And we get to see results of this before anybody. So that's one of the most pleasurable things for us. As the onboard token doctor, so to speak, I was always the crew medical officer. And it's CMO. I always said it was chief medical officer, but there was only one, obviously. But I did a lot of blood draws. So I drew everyone else's blood, and then I drew my blood. And we had to do that at least once a month for the science experiments we were doing, looking at human metabolism in space, what happens to bone and muscle and everything. And you can do all these things just fine in zero gravity. You just have to learn how to manage your stuff. Anything you put down is going to float away. And there's certain nuances and changes in the human body that you have to account for. This is my friend Kate Rubens, who is also a life scientist, so I brag on her a little bit. One of my mentees, actually. But she's a world-class virologist, and at one point in her life she was isolating Ebola virus in the Congo in a moon suit, and now she's in space, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. And she was also a flight engineer. I'll call attention to the red book that she's holding there. It's all in Russian, because it's one of the Soyuz manuals. And when we fly with the Russian Soyuz, you just have to know Russian. So all of us do. And so we've kind of become a bilingual astronaut corps. Is another thing we never expected to happen, but one of the signs of what we do. I always like to show the toilet when I can. It's timely because they're having problems with this right now. Some of my buddies are up there changing a fan separator pump, which I remember, not fondly. But there's a couple of interesting things about the toilet. First of all, no gravity. So if you pee, it's not like gravity's going to pull it down where you want it to go. It's all airflow. You turn on a fan and you get close enough and airflow directs it. So we substitute airflow for gravity. You still got to be a good shot. And it's very important. And if you're not a good shot, you're a bad citizen, because things go free into the atmosphere and you're either going to get them in your hair or breathe them or whatever. So use your imagination there. But the other interesting thing is that when you pee into this thing, you see that little hose there that goes in the back, it goes into a machine that reclaims about 85% and turns it into potable water. So we recycle 85% of our wee-wee. You pee into that hose and it's going to be in your coffee in about 4 days. And frankly, people thought we were doing that for years before we started. It's hard. It is really hard to do. But it's important because it costs upwards of $18,000, $20,000 to launch a pound of anything. And if you don't have to launch that water, you can keep reusing it. That's huge. That's how we're going to go to Mars. That's how we're going to have a sustained presence in space. So that little picture there on the right, that's us doing the first taste test of the water that was recycled ever. So we had press on the ground and mission control and all that. What they didn't know is that I, as the medical officer, had been drinking that water for a few days to make sure it was okay, and it was tasting okay, so we didn't make bad faces on live TV. But anyway, that's really an amazing technology that we've developed, and we're actually getting better and better at it. It's something that we can use on the ground immediately in places where there are water shortages. I would normally devolve into a long lecture on weightless physiology, because that's what I do every day. And applying what we know of weightless physiology to do spacecraft design. I live and breathe that, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just tell you that, just remember, there's no gravity, there's no up, there's no down, there's no sedimentation, there's no buoyancy. Nothing separates liquids of different densities or air or gases of different densities. And my friend B. Alvin Drew there is getting ready to go to sleep, and it looks like he's standing up, but that's only because of the way we have the camera. There's no up, there's no down. It's totally up to you. So it kind of looks like we're standing. And on the right there, that's that neutral body posture. If you just let yourself relax in zero gravity, that's what you'll look like. So if you're designing a work restraint or a sleeping bag or anything, that's the human body posture that you need to accommodate. Not sitting in a chair, not lying on a bed. It's a whole new world. So these are the kinds of things that we have to think about. Now, I'm not going to read this to you. This is a picture when I was running the NASA Human Research Program, one of our artists drew, and my staff thought it was too creepy to use, so I think I'm the only one that uses it. But basically, every system in the body changes. We'll put it that way. And after a period of weeks, you adapt to weightlessness and you essentially become an extraterrestrial. And you're good for weightlessness. You lose blood, you lose circulating plasma volume, your balance system changes, you become optimized for zero gravity. It's amazing that we do that. And up there it's great. It bites you when you come down. And so we have these states of dual adaptation that we look for. If you're lucky, you get to do a spacewalk. I did a couple, and I was actually doing it in the Russian spacesuit. And that's me in I guess on the left, in the blue striped suit. Fabulous experience. I could talk for a long time about that, but just tell you that if you ever do enter the space field, this is what you want to do. It's the holy grail, really, for all of us. And anytime we get a chance, we're looking out the window. And you cannot imagine how beautiful the Earth is. And I think if there is one experience that we could share with everybody, it would be to see your home planet from space. You know, it's just impossibly beautiful. Blue, swirly white clouds hanging out there in the utter blackness of space. And you kind of look and you think, man, that's it. That's all we got. We really need to take care of it. It also becomes very intriguing to watch geology, weather patterns. This is Western Africa. If you really want to see where the people are, though, you wait for nighttime when you're on the other side, the non-sunlit side. And the footprint of humanity is best defined with city lights. Does anybody know where this is? Yeah, Egypt. Perfect. Cairo. The Nile, which is populated in the middle of the desert. So you can see that in the Mediterranean on the top there, and Israel in the upper right. So it's just amazing. But remember, I told you that we're going how fast? Anybody listening? Yeah, outstanding. 17,500 miles an hour. And this is more what it looks like to us. So kind of coming up through west central Africa, you can see the Nile, you can see the Red Sea there, the Sinai Peninsula, Israel. Now this is only slightly sped up, but this is about how fast we go. So if you're taking a still picture, you have to be very quick, very ready, and compensate for that motion. Roll your camera as you go and you're looking down. And we end here basically on the shore of the Caspian Sea, but all of those little lights, that's again where the people are. And the big function, which is unusual not to see here, but you're typically seeing a lightning storm somewhere. There's always lightning going on somewhere in the world. Okay, so this is what it looks like to come home. I had 2 ways to get up there, 2 ways to come home. The space shuttle would land like a cargo plane, fairly gentle. And remember, I told you it was a bit of a rough takeoff in the shuttle, but you get that back when you land because it's very, very gentle. And I had only been up for 2 weeks on this mission, so we weren't too badly deconditioned. But I can tell you that 2 Gs feels like 6 Gs after you've been weightless for a long time, because your body really has undergone a lot of that change already. But it was very nice. We landed just like an airplane down there at the Kennedy Space Center, and it's green, it's wonderful. It was just really, really great to be back with my friends. And a very, very different experience from this one, which was the Soyuz. Now, we don't have a chase plane this high, so it starts with an artist rendition. But here you scream through the atmosphere, you dump all that velocity, 17,500 miles to 0. That's what you got to do now. You slow down by friction with the atmosphere, and you're looking out your window, and you're watching your heat shield spark away. You're watching the air, the oxygen around you glow in plasma, and you're watching your window melt, which nobody told me would happen. So you're actually on the right side, the lower right side, it's white hot. It's actually getting thinner. You can actually see it physically getting thinner and start to kind of run to the other edge, the trailing edge, where it's starting to cool, yellow and red hot and whatnot. And that's just what happens. So I think they don't tell you purposely, because I like to watch people look at that. But it's designed, it's exactly what's supposed to happen, and when you're coming down through the atmosphere, that will actually blow off. It's sacrificial. And then there's another window underneath that you can see through, which is good because you want to see the horizon before this happens. You hit the ground. And remember, the Soyuz was a very gentle takeoff, but you pay for that at the end. You scream through the atmosphere. There's a lot of explosive cartridges that throw out your parachutes, blow off your heat shield, and then we fire these little rocket engines just before the ground. And it's described by one of my friends as a bunch of explosions and flashes followed by a car wreck at the end. But then you land. You're in the middle of the Kazakh desert, and people are right there to get you. And after 6.5 months, it was just so good to breathe fresh air, see familiar faces. I will have to confess that my commander and I did not want to leave the station. We didn't want to go home because we were just having such a good time up there. But we both had big families. It was time to go. And really, really cool to be down. So that's kind of my spaceflight experience. So I'm going to kind of bring this to a close by telling you where we are now and where we're going. So one thing about it is our space program now is very international. I grew up in the Cold War era, duck and cover and all that, and you guys didn't, which is awesome. We've actually been working together with our Russian counterparts since 1992. And we can't really imagine doing big projects with human spaceflight without our Russian colleagues. So we had the Shuttle Mir program all through the 90s, and we've been flying stationed together for all this time since the year 2000. There's 5 space agencies: Japan, Canada, the European Space Agency, 15 countries there, US and Russia, and that is how we operate. When I was about your age, the Apollo-Soyuz program happened, 1975. It showed us that cooperation in space, even between 2 countries that didn't get along very well elsewhere, was possible. So up there on the upper left, very powerful images of the Russian crew and the US crew together at a table in space. Lower right-hand image, that's our reality today. Many countries, predominantly US and Russian, together at the table every day in space, working together, and these represent hundreds of people that work together on the ground every day across barriers of language, culture, and measurement systems. They're metric, for crying out loud. We're English, but that's how we do things now, and it works. Wasn't the easiest way to do it, but it works. The other big thing is commercialization. NASA and the other space agencies aren't the only game in town, which is something we wanted 20 years ago, and we're finally getting. So that includes both human spaceflight, satellites, launchers, and it's really quite wonderful. And so what we have now is a thriving space community that not only will be flying people, but flying science experiments and payloads. Another new thing that we didn't anticipate was the suborbital tourist industry, which is starting up this year, probably start flying tourists next year. Two companies doing it, Virgin Galactic on the left and Blue Origin on the right, which, by the way, is here in Washington. It's headquartered in Kent, Washington. But these will give people about 4 minutes of zero gravity and that view of the Earth that we really want to share with people. And they'll basically become astronauts because they'll get above the required 100 kilometers. And we have 4 human-carrying spacecraft for low Earth orbit being built right now, which is really quite amazing. This is not PowerPoint. This is hardware that's being tested and built and flown. And 2 of these will be flying this year. So, there's never really been a time in history where so many human-carrying spacecraft were being built at the same time. Even our Mercury, Gemini, Apollo era was nothing like this. I mean, we are building all of these. Now, I have this twisted sense of pride that all this is happening in America because I'd really like to see this internationally as well. But what we're doing in the U.S. right now, both from the agency standpoint and the commercial world, is really quite amazing. The other big thing we're doing is building a large rocket. It's I think a lot of you may have heard of the Falcon Heavy, Elon Musk's rocket, which, by the way, we are heavily supportive of. The Space Launch System will carry about twice that payload and will enable us to loft big loads to low Earth orbit, which will then go further back to the Moon, eventually to Mars, and to possible asteroids. And to carry people, we're building the Orion spacecraft, which will carry people back to the Moon. So, I mean, it's a very exciting time. We haven't had people out of low Earth orbit since the early 70s. It's about time. So the world you guys are entering is going to be very different. Now, another really big thing is when I was your age, there were 9 orderly planets. That was it. And the solar system was kind of interesting, but wow, have things changed. First of all, now there's 8 planets. Now, don't be sad for Pluto, because the reason you're having that conversation is that there's things even bigger than Pluto in our solar system just beyond it. Solar system is a much more interesting place than we ever thought, and there's resources, water, for instance, abundant on Mercury, the Moon, and Mars. It's amazing. And this new revolution of what we call extrasolar planets. We are not the only game in town. We found that planets are more the rule rather than the exception around other stars. So we have now cataloged thousands of other planets around other stars. And I don't like the term extrasolar, by the way. Extrasolar planets sounds arrogant. It sounds geocentric, quite frankly, because we're just looking from our little knothole. But the fact that these planets are out here is astounding. And I'll call your attention to the TRAPPIST-1 system, which some of you may have heard about, but it's not that far away, 40 light years. Okay, it's pretty far, 240 trillion miles, but close enough for us to see what's going on there. And there are probably 4 Earth-like planets in that system. Now, we can't fly faster than light yet. We can't travel that way yet. We haven't had a reason really to really want to. But now, boy, what a magnet to know that there's a whole bunch, like thousands to millions of Earth-like worlds out there, bless you, that just kind of call us outward. So it really is a brand new outlook. So I'm going to leave it with this. You guys have all heard the acronym STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Math. Why do you need to know this stuff? Well, if you're going to go into science, technology, engineering, and math, yeah. What if you're not going to do that? Do you need to know this stuff? Answer is absolutely yes. Carl Sagan is one of my boyhood heroes, wrote an article in the Skeptical Inquirer many years ago. And this is one of the things he said. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. So do we think that is the same, less, or more now? Well, certainly my observation is it's even worse. There's an incredible mismatch, a societal mismatch, in those who have knowledge and those who don't. And a lot of people think about distribution of wealth, but distribution of knowledge is so empowering, is every bit as important, and what I would say is a responsibility on you guys, both individually, meaning you need to know this stuff because that is your society now. You're going to vote on initiatives that are dependent on everything from nuclear power to stem cell research. You need to understand some of this stuff, and you need to be able to communicate it to people. So that is the charge that I put on you. And I'll just remind you that, if you look at the relative balance between hard work and genius, which one is more important? Well, I think I'm showing you here. Hard work always trumps genius. I do like to point out that we have about 44-ish or so astronauts in the office. 2 are geniuses, and that's about what you want. The rest of us are just kind of well-rounded and hard workers. You need a couple just to really do amazing things, and we have a couple. And one of them, by the way, is just from Oregon here at Silverton, Don Pettit. But that's not who gets all this stuff done. The business of exploration, innovation, discovery, it's hard workers with a little bit of insight and a little bit of vision, and that's really what you want. So your goals need to be tied to that hard work. Don't let people tell you you're not smart enough to do thing X. It's more, how hard are you willing to work for it? And you can never know enough. If you think you know enough, you're dangerous. That's certainly our motto down where we live. So, just continual learning. And believe it or not, it's not a drudgery. When you get out of here, you're just going to think, that's what I've been doing, and that's what's comfortable. And maybe it'll be a different bell schedule and different people, but learning is okay because it just makes you better. I do like to point out that there is another Washingtonian who's about to launch on her first mission, Major Ann McLean, who went to the Gonzaga Prep School in Spokane. One of my roles is actually as an instructor astronaut to teach the new guys EVA skills. So this is Ann and I in the pool a few months ago. She's really good. She's really quite an amazing young lady. A really, really hard worker. You don't want to piss her off because she could kill you with a thought. She's very fit and strong. And these are kind of my big values that I like to leave you with. Curiosity is just a spark. It's a fuel. Hard work makes things happen. When you get out there, find your peers. You're going to find that, the further you go in your education, you're going to meet people who think like you do and wonder where they've been all your life. Even as wonderful as high school is, there's people out there who are going to understand you so much better, and they're quite amazing. And then, find a calling. You don't have to do that now. You don't need a destination now. You need a direction. You need to go somewhere. So don't sit around waiting for that inspiration to hit you. You need to keep going in a direction. But your calling is out there, so just always be looking for it. All right, and I will leave you with this. This is the class of 2017, 12 souls. We had 18,354 people apply for these 12 slots, which we, by the way, in the astronaut office choose. And we chose these 12 people. And so far as I know, again, being a mentor and instructor to some of them, I think our 2 geniuses are stable in the office. Most of these kids are just kids. They're hard workers. They're amazing. They're passionate, and they're just hard workers, and they're going to be awesome. Whoops. All right, so I will leave it at that. I'm going to open it for questions. There is so much I didn't tell you. So if you're interested at all, there's NASA websites. Human Research Program is a great website if you're interested in the human body in space. And there's exploration sites, and they just tell you some of the amazing things we're doing. So
let's go one question in here, and then we'll do some questions from the Google form.
Okay, so I'm looking for a hand of a worthy soul. Yeah, you.
So if you were to do an experiment on Earth with zero gravity, what is the best way to get as close to that as possible?
Okay, that's a really good question. If we were trying to do an experiment on Earth with zero gravity, and the answer is it depends on how long and how pure you want it. We have an airplane that flies these really brutal parabolic arcs. So it gives you about 22 seconds of zero gravity as you're coming over the top and heading down the bottom. That is real zero gravity. We use that for training, we use that for systems, but it's only 22 seconds. So you can't really do long physiology or crystal growth experiments. And when you're coming down at the bottom, you all of a sudden weigh twice what your normal weight. So you oscillate between 0 and twice your body weight and 0 and twice your body weight, and it's really provocative. We have drop towers, which will give you just a couple of seconds, and we have rotating vessels, which continually change directions. And if you're a cell in a culture, it feels like zero gravity. There are tricks that we can do, but there is just nothing like sustained weightlessness. There's nothing that really emulates the changes in the human body that we can do on the ground, except being up there. So, all right, from our studio audience.
So here's a few questions from students in the classroom. Maddie Bertolo asked, how did you know what you were going to do after high school? And there's several other questions about, did you always know you wanted to be an astronaut? What was your path like?
Yeah, I mean, that's easy. I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I think, I said what characterizes astronauts' love of learning, but career anxiety is one of those too, because you got a bunch of people who had interests that were fairly broad. I at certain times, I think when I knew Dale Croswell, I was headed more towards astronomy. I was building telescopes, and before that I wanted to be a marine biologist. I got my degree in marine zoology. I loved to fly, I loved to dive, and I loved English, believe it or not. I had killer English teachers in high school, and I almost got a minor in English in the University of Washington. So, a lot of us are all over the map. So I had no idea about being an astronaut when I was in high school. Even when I went to NASA, I went there to be a space doctor, space medicine. So the point being, and by the way, I was 40 years old when I got picked as an astronaut. So lesson for the adults. I mean, you can almost never be too old to change careers. I mean, there are possibilities now that just never were there before. So again, you don't need the destination. You just need a direction, and let that hard work and passion guide you to your destination. So.
Okay, Jason Kovalenko asks, how much do high school classes matter post-high school? And Brittany asks, what sport, if any, did you do at CHS?
What sport? Okay, let's see. So how classes post-high school, how do they matter? They matter a lot. Hopefully that means you're in university and you've had to actually declare a direction, a major or a college that you have to be in, and commit to it. So yeah, those classes matter, but I would also say that the professors matter a lot, and it's worth doing a little bit of research when you go into college to find out by word of mouth usually who's a good professor, who's inspiring, and who kind of fits your teaching style. But yeah, those classes matter a lot. That's where you really want to work hard. Sports.
You were asking about high school classes.
Oh, high school classes. We didn't have that much choice when I was here. But you know, if you want to do something space related, it is still science and engineering related. So as much math, physics as you can possibly get, you definitely want to do that. So sorry I misunderstood that. And I think you guys have killer math and science classes now compared to what we had. I played tennis as a sport. I played junior varsity and varsity tennis. I was never very good at it, but I was a little better than some of the other people I played, so I did okay. All right, let me take one from in here if it's okay. Yeah, the sneezer. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you've been countermanded, but hold your thought. Whatever she says.
Okay, where the aliens at?
Where the aliens at? We've moved them from Area 51. What's that?
Like, can you answer that? Where the aliens at?
Now, I'm joking a little bit because one of my NASA friends was asked about Area 51, and he said, look, everybody knows we moved the aliens from Area 51 to Sector 29, and he was in Scotland at the time. The next morning's paper, Astronaut admits aliens moved to Sector 29. You know, I've told you that there's planets in abundance in the universe. And that they're very Earth-like. There's water, there's resources, there's everything. The chances of there being life not on Earth are overwhelming. There's no question about it. But we haven't found it yet. NASA sucks at keeping secrets, no matter what the conspiracy people say. I mean, it's amazing what little thing happens which leaks to the press, which causes us all sorts of problems. That's a big thing. We couldn't hide it. I also work with the Air Force. It will happen one day. We will find life, and it's most likely that we'll find it from a distance before we get to go meet it. But we will find it, or it will find us. It's inevitable. We just haven't done it yet. Although I've actually thought a couple of my colleagues were aliens. Yeah, go ahead. You have to use your outside voice here. When do I think we'll be on Mars? You know, if it were a science and technology issue, I could tell you, but it's not. It's a geopolitical one. If NASA were free to choose its own destination, we would have been on Mars 20 years ago. We can definitely do it. Anytime we have the resolve to go, we can go. But we have to have the political support that sustains. When you're trying to do something that takes years and you get your budget looked at every year, and a new White House potentially every 4 years who wants to change directions, that's our problem. That's why working internationally helps us, because it actually stabilizes us. We could be on Mars in the mid-20s or the mid-30s, one of those two, because of the way the planets line up. We'll get there. All right, should I take another one from remote?
Let's take another one
okay.
from online. Someone asked, would you be interested in going to Mars? And someone else asked, how do you balance family life with all of this activity?
Yeah, so I would go to Mars in a heartbeat. If you say the rocket's fueled and ready to go tomorrow, I'm there. You know, it's big discovery. It's, you know, our curiosity really drives us there. I have 5 children with this amazing wife of mine, and we're a very tight family. And part of what you do when you choose to be an astronaut and go explore is similar to what other people with risky jobs do, whether they're in the military or firefighters or whatever. You have these conversations with your loved ones, and everybody has to buy into it to a certain extent and own it. So my kids had a lot of ownership in my missions. But I haven't watched TV for 28 years. I mean, I have no idea what's on. I have not taken newspapers or anything like that, and we don't. My wife is a professor of pediatrics at the University of Texas. We did kids and work, and that's it. And our kids watched us work hard, and they understood that there were only two important things for us. It was them and our work. And I don't think that was bad for them to realize that you can have a passion for something that you feel strongly about, that the benefits are worth the hard work and the risk for. But we gave up everything else. So I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld or anything, really. So I don't know what you guys are watching now. In fact, does anybody watch TV anymore? It's all streaming, right? All right, so take another one in here.
A lot of people kind of like what you're saying. Have you ever heard of Fortnite?
Huh.
That's what I thought. There's about 10 questions about Fortnite.
Holy crap.
Why don't you take one more again?
Is it a sci-fi series or something? Oh, you don't know either. Okay. Okay. All right. Yes, over there in the blue. Stand up and use your outside voice, please.
So, you talked a lot about the physical effects of space.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the mental effects?
Do I? Yeah, I mean, so he asked about the mental and psychological aspects of spaceflight. So we have what we call the big four risks medically about going into spaceflight. So radiation is number one, bone and muscle is number two. We have a neuroophthalmic syndrome we've discovered that zero gravity does to your brain and your eyes. Psychology is number four. So it is on the top four. Being isolated in a small space, imagine choosing 5 of your friends, your best friends, locking yourself in your garage with them for 6 months. That's what we do on station now. Imagine locking yourself in your garage for 3 years. That's what a Mars mission might entail. And you can't go outside, you can't get away from each other. The chow is not going to be primo. So yeah, we think about psychology issues a lot. There's actually a lot of literature. There's a couple of textbooks on space psychology. There's a really good chapter in my textbook, by the way. Second edition's coming out really soon. And it's very interesting and very intriguing, way beyond what I can say. But I will tell you that we select people and we train them towards what we call expeditionary behaviors. And so before you fly in space, you have spent a couple of weeks on an underwater habitat. You spent a week in a cave, so no sunlight, no visual cues or anything, and you've had to explore and work hard. Typically, we'll do backpacking trips in like minus 20-degree weather and various other things. So we put people in situations that are uncomfortable. We test them and we train them, and you do that before you put someone in a spaceship. And we do pretty well. And I will have to say that this is something that our Russian colleagues were years ahead of us on. They knew this, we learned from them, and we really profited from it. How about up in the red up there?
Last question.
Last question, no pressure.
What would you compare space to with one thing?
One thing, space. I mean, space is awful big. So, all right. There are several different answers to that question, but I'll just tell you, I'm a sailor. I love being at sea, and when I'm out on a boat, there's typically 4 or 5 people. Your main dangers are fire, leaks, except you leak in a boat, the water comes in, you sink. You leak in a spacecraft, the air leaks out and you die. And crew problems, psychological problems. You have to worry about navigation. You're doing some exploration. To me, offshore sailing is about as close to spaceflight as you can get. So,
Okay,
that's
so
a good question.
That was the last question in here. We'll go one more online.
Okay.
It kind of combines a couple questions. You've touched on this a little bit. What's the biggest hurdle in our way as far as space goes? And do you think we'll overcome our technological adolescence?
Wow. Technological adolescence, yes, we'll overcome. So biggest hurdle, geopolitical, by far. We have everything we need to explore, expand into, colonize our solar system, utilize it. We have development steps, not physical breakthroughs, to give us nuclear propulsion that will give us access to Mars, to the asteroids. We can colonize. It's expensive, but we can do that, and we should do that. And we really want to have life off of Earth, because Earth is kind of vulnerable. So, those are just questions of unity and and administration and cooperation, things that everybody can really help with. We will get there. But the big thing then is what then, I think. You know, those we can envision in the next few decades. What if we figure out a way to overcome light speed, and all of these planets are now at our disposal? And that's a big if, make no mistake. But then what? Suppose the universe kind of becomes our oyster, and we're able to get to these extrasolar planets, so to speak, and colonize and really spread. Boy, those are really big issues, because not because we have the technology to do it now, but because we now know they're out there. So what used to be science fiction is now possible. So those are bigger questions to me. So it's a good question.
Let's give him a hand. Thanks again very much.
Yeah, no worries. Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right, a couple housekeeping items. Students, second period will begin at 9:30. In just a second, I will release you. Thanks for being a good audience. I hope that those in the classroom are able to see and hear well. A couple thank yous to Mrs. Johnson with the technological things, Mr. Fox, and one more time, let's give him a big Camas thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys. It was really great to be here.
Students, you are released to go to second period.